Hello again. Nice to see you, Jihan. Thank you so much for joining me here today for this little interview with you for the BTPA, the Bowen Therapy Professional Association. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you very much for asking. It's great to see you today.
Yeah, no, and I'm really excited as well because we're going to have you teaching this year at the Bowen AGM on the 5th of October, and you're going to be sharing with us your empowering movement or a section of your empowering movement work. And I'm really looking forward to that because it's something being a Qigong teacher. I'm also really passionate about the importance of good, healthy, mindful movement, and we'll get into that a little bit later into the interview. But to begin with, just in case there's anybody that hasn't come across your work before or doesn't really know you so well, tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, how you got involved in physical therapy, how you got involved in Bowen technique.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, um, there was no plan to get involved in physical therapy in my younger life. Absolutely none. Um, but I left school and went to work with horses. I used to ride, do a little bit of competing myself, teach others. And then I got into a bit of rehab work, working with riders who had had injuries in the industry and they wanted to get back onto horses and get back into riding. So I ended up doing a kind of mix of teaching and riding therapy, but very unstructured, very led from experience, not through qualifications as such. And that was in London many moons ago. And long story short, I ended up moving to the West Country of England, and I was working at a kind of residential retreat centre. And I came across this group of people who would visit semi regularly, and they were doing something called Bowen. So it was never a conscious decision to meet the Bowen technique or Bowen therapy. And occasionally I would be called in to be an odd body on a couch, to even up the numbers in the classroom. So I came across Bowen whilst I was still in my late teens, so about 30 years ago. So for many people, they come across Bowen in the second half of their life. I came across Bowen in the very young, relatively younger years. And I noticed my health physically changing. And I went to the people that were involved at that time. So it was way back when Bowen first came to the UK, and inquired as to why this could be. And could it be that I was on the couch receiving treatment and I hadn't even spoken about any ailments that I had going on? And the answer was yes. And that led me to inquire further. And also without plan, I then went on maybe a couple of years later to train in the technique. So that's where it started. Never an actual plan, it happened.
So when was that? Just give us a time frame. How long ago are we talking here?
Just shy of 30 years ago, I met the
Ooh.
technique.
Yeah.
Um, and maybe, which year are we in? About 25 years ago, I began training or qualified in Bowen.
Yeah, definitely. So now you're one of these wonderful characters that's had so much time to have thousands and thousands of hours of bodies under your fingers.
Absolutely. And that was one of the lovely things from my transition from working with clients to teaching others with the technique, is that um, I qualified and went straight into practice. And it was one of the unusual circumstances where I was treating about 80 people a week every week in the first year of qualifying. So
Wow.
I had a multi-bed approach. I don't work like this anymore. I spend much more time. I'm much quieter with my treatment work. I had a multi-bed approach, and I was working 3 rooms at a time, which
Mhm.
allowed the number of people to come through. I really enjoyed it. I really had great successes, or the people did with the therapy that I was using. Um, and then was invited to teach for a couple of different Bowen organisations, and I went with one, and that was my step into beginning to teach Bowen therapy. So it happened quite quickly, really. But yes, I have done my best. I keep my clinic hours up as much as possible.
Yeah, sure. And I think that's a really vital thing as well that uh, I've seen in the past a lot of teachers who essentially have stopped doing clinical work And in a sense, it's kind of like they're just repeating the patterns of the past rather than having that fresh and updated view on that. So, do you consider that quite an important part of your continued development? Is that you're still getting your fingers in on a regular basis into to clients and doing that work with them?
Absolutely. I love clinical work. I think if I was to stop teaching, that might be a thing. Not that I'm planned to. But I don't think I'll ever stop treating. If I could retire or up into, out onto Dartmoor and people could roll up for treatments, I'd still love doing that. It's so easy to do with little impact on ourselves. It's just a wonderful exchange, being able to help people. And that's kind of one of the missions with kind of Bowen College UK is that we're offering training to people to help each other,
Mm,
and then you can go to the well trained, well skilled, really experienced practitioners in each town to get kind of like more advanced work. But yeah, no, I think it's incredibly important. And the team of wonderful teachers that I work with, all of them have been qualified for a minimum of 12, maybe, most upwards of kind of 20 years practice and
mm,
still in clinical practice now.
yeah,
I think it is not vital, but I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. And also going on to develop further work.
yeah.
But we're nowhere near the end. This is just where we are now.
Yeah, beautiful. And I definitely want to look at a little bit more of that later on. But I really agree with you as well. I mean, I've been Bowen qualified now for 13 years, but in professional practice with kinesiology for 21. And there is something about keeping that clinical practice going, keeping our minds in the space that's essential. And just, I don't think I'm ever going to stop learning. And it doesn't matter what I do. I know there's always more areas that interest me, and as new information comes about, and especially with the epigenetics side of the work I do, we're constantly learning new stuff, and
Absolutely.
it just refines and refines and refines the process over and over again. But I know as well within your work, from what I've reading, that there's a couple of real areas that you seem to really specialize in, and that seems to be through the TMJ, the breathing, and the sleep stuff. So, can you talk a little bit about some of those and what it is that's really alive for you in those?
Absolutely. Um, so my initial Bowen training was with kind of the run of Bowen that came via Aussie Wrench.
Hmm.
And then I think I've trained with I've trained with every Bowen sharer of information that I could get to be in a room with. Um, and over the years, trained with the different Bowen modalities that were available in the UK. And I came across one course where the person teaching was really looking at holding space for introducing work around the temporomandibular joint, the TMJ. And I seem to really find that of interest. Again, there was never a plan, but I ran with it. And so that became kind of almost like as soon as I got that bit of work, that's what I concentrated on for the next few years to actually see how much change we could create by working just in that area. Obviously, it doesn't make sense to work in one area, so I broadened back out to looking at the whole. But on that journey, I met some incredible teachers and information sharers like Dr. Brendan Stack, who's sadly no longer with us, obviously Ron Phelan from the Bowen world, Michael Nixon Livy. And within that journey, I came across an amazing dental colleague, now great friend, and he and I managed to get our heads together and start working fairly regularly, actually, to bring the dental side of things, the physical therapy side of things together and meet at the junction of the head. Um, and that's kind of been the last, I'd say, easily 15, 16, 17 years worth of investigation. So, um, first, it started with very much physical balance, functional health, and then has moved to how to change sleep patterns, how to change breathing patterns, because, that's the thing that we can't live without. So the quality of the breath that we take then leads to a whole other, as you know, obviously, a whole other ricocheting events that will change. So yes, it's quite a broad subject, and I've actually got a dissection course coming up with my great colleague and brilliant friend Gary Carter in November this year, where we are there to focus on TMJ breathing through to the diaphragm function. So
Wow.
yeah, it'll be great because we've got quite a broad spectrum of people coming from dentists from South Africa through to Bowen and bodywork therapists in the UK and others throughout Europe. So that will be quite fun.
And do you think that a lot of that key relationship through the TMJ, and again, just for anybody who's maybe a layperson listening in, TMJ is jaw joint, but do you think that a lot of the benefit of that work or the effect of that work is having that transmission through into vagus nerve and those associated cranial nerves, and how that then affects into the ventral systems within the body?
Absolutely, and I think Gus de la Cuira's work is brilliant because he's bringing information in that field to the masses now, which is amazing. You don't have to be a bone therapist to attend his course, and the content of the course is great. So I highly recommend that. Definitely hold that one up to visit as soon as you can. Yeah, but if you think of things from a craniosacral perspective, as soon as you change anything above, what happens below will change too. So we're not just working this area of concern, we're working the entire being from the stomatognathix system through to it's kind of endless. I don't really know where to start or finish with that in a quick insert into an interview.
Yeah, sure. Well, you don't have to be quick about it. You can dive into again some of those important relationships as you see them, and maybe reflection from a clinical point of view of what indications you might see in clinic that draw you back to working TMJ.
From the moment you invite somebody into your treatment room, how they walk through the door, the position of their feet, the position of their head carriage, through to when they lie on the couch and you ask them to take their first big breath in, if that's what you do. If it's a big breath in through their mouth, you've got years of information to start working with rather
Sure.
than a big nasal breath in. So I think the work that is currently circulating by James Nestor is a fantastic author, brilliant person out there and about. The oxygen advantage also shares lots of great information about breathing, but nasal breathing over breathing in, at least through your mouth, less important about breathing out. But as a general issue with our culture, it's out there. People are just kind of like jaws down, breath in, and the ricocheting effect that has to the rest of the body is immense. So yeah, there's ask me again.
So, I mean, I find it really fascinating as well because, from a personal point of view, anatomically, I have a vaulted palate, which means that for anybody that doesn't know, it means that my palate is really high and my teeth are really narrow inside. So, for a lot of people, you can stick two thumbs and you can put them inside and your teeth only just touch the side. When I stick one thumb in, my teeth are touching on either side of that thumb. So really narrow, really high up in the palate. And that's affected my breathing throughout my life. I've been, classically as a young person, I was allergic rhinitis sufferer, and being not a mouth breather is a hard piece of work for me, and I have to
Absolutely.
really work with it and really think about it. And some of these patterns really, anatomically but also psychologically go back a long way. So what do you tend to see as changes that are taking place within that as well?
So part of the clinical work that I do, which is not yet out there as kind of CPD work, is I work with clients in collaboration with Andrew Zranko, who's my dental chum and colleague. Um, and what we look to do is change breathing posture and breathing patterns through habits of the client alongside bodywork. So
Mhm.
it's not just, wear this and you'll be better. We're asking the soft tissues around the area that are involved with breathing to change over a period of time.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, if you have quite a narrow arch, the lower jaw has no choice but to go back. And as soon as it goes back, it narrows your airway. So the first thing that you want to do, or you need to do in order to survive, is get air in. So head goes back, lower jaw drops forward, pull air in. And that's what we're seeing kind of everywhere these days. It's not right or wrong. It's just how we've evolved. And there's some great work out there from the likes of Roger Price. I don't know, the endless people that have come before me. And I just feel like I've been very grateful to have come across the information and be able to package it in a way that we can change individuals' health when they step into the treatment room. So Bowen's my primary modality, absolutely 100%. I think it probably always will be. Do a bit of kinesiology like you do, and I find that brilliant as an addition to Bowen, because we can ask the person system on the couch, is this as good as it could be, or what needs to change? So similarly to Bowen, it's out of my responsibility. So I treat the person, and the person system says, yes, I can change this. No, I can't change that. And then that tells us where to go next. Introducing kinesiology alongside Bowen is brilliant. Like, is what I've done enough, or do I need to go somewhere else? Or is something else needed? So yeah, it's kind of, then you can start down the track. Similarly to, as Gus said on one of your previous interviews, it's like being loyal to the client, not the therapy, although I'm quite loyal to Bowen.
Well, and that's perfectly understandable as well. I love that. And I'm also fascinated as well because originally, so I would be classed as a bioenergetic kinesiologist. We looked at five element theory, acupuncture theory as a core part of my training. And this is where I love then the crossover into like Graham Pennington's work because he's, really interested in that acupuncture link within the work. And so for me, I'm not just looking at the kinesiology as a manual confirmation of what's going on, but I'm also looking at those potential relationships then into the meridians, into the emotions, into the organs. So those relationships can be really, really broad. And that's why I find the TMJ work really interesting, because this big link that we've got up here, small intestine 19, right on the TMJ joint. So it's kind of like and stomach meridians and gallbladder stuff. So it's like all these beautiful relationships that take place. And, it's great that there is now more research that's coming through both in the dental world, in the dissection world, in the neuro world as well, and just seeing these relationships on different levels of the person as well.
Absolutely. There was something that you said that I wanted to pick up there and run with. Oh, well, I guess the Bowen training that I currently work with and run, responsible for running, we do involve training on a little bit of TCM and meridians within the foundation course.
Yeah, no.
So looking at a perspective as a whole, but also there's traditional Chinese medicine, meridians, that information packaged up neatly to go alongside Bowen. But then going back to very kind of like structural bodywork, not of a TCM element. Um, Even if you look at things like the anatomy trains, which was an idea of how bodies could function, muscle, tendon, ligament, bone, along with fascial connections from Tom Myers. And even Tom says it's an idea, it's not to be held tight to, it's an idea. But that helps, like having those types of ideas as well, help really gel working above and having an effect below. Um, it's less easy to affect the whole body via the elbow compared to the TMJ, but it is still possible, especially if
Yeah,
you're what's the try shimmy hold? A Matsu
yeah,
practitioner.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I'm not saying you can't affect the whole body by working the elbow joint, but you can affect so many more systems by working through this area of concern. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. And it's interesting as well, you bring up anatomy trains, because within the Qigong school that I teach, one of the things that our founder introduced into this is actually a really old concept within Chinese medicine, which is something called the fascia sinew channels. And each
Mm.
one of these fascia sinew channels is then meridian related as well. So then you start to look at those structures and those relationships, through the connective tissue. And again, I just love the fact that we've got these multi layers, and you can use almost any one of them to affect the others. So it's not just a unidirectional thing. You can work, and I think this is one of the things that Bowen has really been beneficial in showing, is that we don't have to do heavy work to affect change. And I think
Absolutely.
that's so important.
Yeah, the two things I think of with that are the research that's coming out these days to do with fascia, a type of connective tissue, is that superficial fascia responds to light lateral movement, and that's what we do with Bowen. So at the moment, there isn't the research to say Bowen will do this, but if you do cross fiber light lateral movements, which are part of the general Bowen move, you will get fascial change. That's wonderful. The other thing, what did you say?
I was talking about light touch and how
Oh,
effective
yeah,
that
that's it. And the fascia sinew channels. My big passion is anatomy, not the anatomy that we've learnt via the anatomy books that just teach about muscles, tendons, ligaments, and bone. That turns most people off. You mention anatomy, and they're like, "Oh, I have to do an anatomy and physiology course." The anatomy and physiology courses are fantastic because it gives us a common language to work
Yeah.
with. And so, before any training, do that. And then you can enter into the room and we're speaking the same language. And then we can take the investigation further. But with the anatomy studies that I'm so passionate about, not only, upskilling myself, but also anybody else that wants to come and join in, please do. It's great. You get to investigate the tissue density by density. And I say density rather than layer,
Mhm.
because even though there are layers in the body, they're not really layers. They only become layers if you create the layer. When you put your hands on the client in front of you, they're not a series of layers.
Mhm.
Their system has a series of different types of tissue that have different functions, and those that we can investigate within the anatomy study side of things just allows Bowen to make so much more sense. So yeah, that's definitely a side I will push for a good long time from now, is the study of actual human anatomy, particularly with a fascial focus, because that helps us explain Bowen in ways that before fascia really came to the forefront in the last 10 or 20 years, it was a little bit harder to explain how Bowen can have such a body wide effect.
Yeah, beautiful. I really love that. So it makes me curious. What do you think is the hardest concept for people to grasp when you're teaching Bowen, when you're sharing Bowen?
I think, as I obviously have not prepared the answer to this question. Thinking now,
Perfect.
I still would say it's the less is more approach. Um, Less is more, because there's still kind of like a leftover feeling from the war, like keep calm and carry on. It's gonna hurt to work. We'll get through this. And then this
Really?
gentle modality comes in where we offer a bit of information and then we step away. We offer a bit more information, then we step away, and we come back and read the changes, and that tells us where to go next, ideally. So yeah, the idea, and from the years of training, like when I was thinking about this last night. When I was in my early 30s, I was teaching about 200 people a year Bowen. That's, I was on the road 3 weeks out of 4 teaching. I don't have that balance anymore. It's very more clinic based than it is teaching, but there's a lot of both. Um, and the people that had no previous bodywork training could pick the idea up and run with it a lot faster compared to those that were like of a sports massage background, for example, where they're used to having contact for the entirety of the session and using their training to access tissues. So I'd say definitely the less is more approach would be one of the harder things to grasp. But I think
Mm.
it's also becoming more normal, which is lovely to see in my lifetime. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
it's great.
And I think you put that beautifully earlier on as well when you were referring to checking whether or not the body can change something and wants to change something and allowing it that space to do what it wants to do rather than thinking that we know best and that belongs there or this needs to be like that.
Yeah, through all of the schools of Bowen that I've like trained with and continue to. If anybody's putting a course on, I would like to be on it, please. I love being in the room. I just would like to learn as much as possible. The different schools of Bowen, as you know, some of your listeners and others may know, come from, you know, they're quite varied. The earlier ideas of Tom's work is a lot gentler, a lot of less time with the body, through to the later ideas where they kind of have chiropractic adjustment type views to them. Like, I love Graham Pennington's work. Actually, Graham put a fantastic post out on Facebook maybe a month ago from now. Somebody asked in the Importance of Symmetry group on Facebook, how do I explain the difference between iOS Bowen versus traditional Bowen, for example? And Graham put it so eloquently. I won't be able to put it as eloquently as he did, but he really explained how the idea of iOS Bowen, for example, is about changing dural drag and it's about asymmetries within the body. I have loved from the beginning how working with Bowen in a less of an adjustment way and more of a parasympathetic way allows me to have a greater spectrum, like available more for general practice within my clinic because of that parasympathetic response to treatment, the ability for the client to drop into that rest, digest, repair response, I think is absolutely, personally, I think it's absolutely necessary in order to stimulate change. And then we can investigate why something hasn't changed, but it allows us to work on an organ level, not just a musculoskeletal level or fascial level. So
Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Well, being as excited as you are to be in the room, you should be coming to Waking the Five Element Spirits Qigong retreat that we've got happening in Snowdonia in September,
That
where we've got
sounds
a
great.
teacher over from Bali who is going to take you so deep into organs, emotions, connective tissue, and movement. It's beautiful stuff. But anyway, for another time. You know, in terms as well of how you've changed your practice and your viewpoints within what you're doing, is there anything as well that you have, you know, completely dropped that you used to rely on? And is there anything that you've embraced now that you used to resist within your practice?
Oh, anything I used to rely on. Hmm. No, there's nothing that comes to mind at the moment because my aim always is to integrate more. And sometimes when you know, come across a bit of learning, I might run with that for a little while to really bed it in and feel like I, you know, have an idea of what I'm doing with it. Um, and sometimes I may forget an idea that then I revisit and go, oh, I must remember this. This is such a great little nugget. Um, so that there's nothing that I've dropped. I think what I have embraced is speed, less speed, and time. But I am a bit of a period of time person rather than a quick kind of like instant uh, convincer. So yeah, I'm just being present with a person or a body system, or so I think my work's pretty slowed down over the years. I would say I'd need to ask my clients to see if they would agree, but
Yeah.
I do. I
And
think from a teaching perspective, I also encourage people to start slow and then go from there.
it,
Um, rather than, a series of moves, a set of procedures. Like, really, let's investigate what we're doing when we do that and the far-reaching effects of it. And then you have more information to go with. So yeah, that happens in the training room and in the treatment room, I think.
Yeah.
Speed gives you time for observation.
And I think that that point about presence, which has been echoed by a number of the people that we've interviewed for this series as well, about where we are as we're approaching that person, and what is then transferring through to us into the person as we're in contact with them as well. And I remember being taught, and there was an emphasis on looking at the tension in your own body and relaxing because of how it changed your sensitivity. But then again, through the Qigong work, it's that I'm also wanting to be in my own internal felt sense and be aware of what that individual is reflecting back to me. What am I reflecting back into them, and how that alone is creating change before I've even done a move. And I find that really fascinating to observe.
Absolutely. I mean, how you're received in your community is one of the first ways that we have contact with clients, isn't it?
Yeah,
My name isn't the most usual name.
sure.
Um, and so not many people know me by name in the community. Oh, some do, but not many people know me by my first name, Jahan, but the Bowen person that works from that area, you
Yeah,
know, and then they come into the treatment room, and it's how you meet that person, like when it's face to face, or how they, before that, as a business, how they find us online or in our socials, how we meet them at the door, how we introduce them to the treatment room, how we introduce them to the treatment as an idea, and
mm,
then once they get on the couch, there are so many more steps before then. And sometimes you bring your energy up to meet somebody, sometimes you bring your energy down to meet them, depending on how they are. It's
yeah.
so important to meet the person where they are and then go on a journey with them. And I think from the training through Bowen College and Bowen College UK, we train people, or the workshops are held slightly differently to the workshops that uh, we all originally learnt Bowen with, because we have kind of more of an experiential workshop. So it's 4 days, ideally in. So you come in on day one and you leave on day four. It's not a 9 to 5 workshop. The idea is that you step into the room and you have your own healing experience within the training.
Mm.
And you don't return back to the lovely partner and children or animals or whoever's there at home for you. You literally stick with the process. And we see huge change within the workshop setting. And I have Manon Bollinger in Canada a lot to thank for this setup. She's an incredible speaker. I hope you find her on your series of interviews. But yeah, so we offer the opportunity to stay and be present from the beginning within the training. Obviously, not the 2 day courses. They are set up so you can either experience Bowen and see if you'd like to become a professional in Bowen therapy, but also to learn a bit of Bowen to help those around you in a safe context. So not those 2 day courses, but the work that takes you to become a Bowen practitioner is not just about how to place a move on the body. It's about the relationship with the client, through to becoming a professional in our Bowen world.
And I'm really glad that you've covered what you've just spoken about there in terms of how you're presented, how you meet people in the room, all of that stuff. Because for me, this really echoes as well the what we see as the four irreducible dimensions of being and relating in integral theory, which is the basis of how I look at stuff, which is that mind, the beliefs, the way that we think. We've got our body, our behavior, our nutrition, our movement. We've got our culture and our relationship, which even two people connecting together create a culture that is mutual in that space and negotiated. And then, of course, the physical environment itself. So if you've got a dank, nasty treatment room, it totally affects the way that the treatment is going to be received by the person that's coming into it. And it will change your behavior and your mindset. And so all of these qualities although we might not necessarily overtly discuss them in normal circumstances, covertly they always have an effect on the outcome of the experience.
Absolutely. And that's even before you put your hands on somebody and perform a Bowen move. So,
Yep.
that's across all spectrums of work, body work, manual movement therapies. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely, absolutely. Now, I want to move on a little bit as well because there are so many things that I can see with Bowen College you've been developing, and again, credit to you and a lot of respect for all the work that you've been putting in. It really is an opus magnum of your life, just what you're creating there. Because again, I see you bringing in lots of different teachers to offer CPD work, and again, we're transcending some of those, I think, earlier limitations that Bowen had within itself about what was in, what was out. And I like the fact that you're including things like the dissection as part of the training within Bowen College. And also, you've just recently started adding a more formal safeguarding course as well. And I'm curious as to what's prompted that, and why you see the value in that within us as Bowen practitioners.
One moment. Somebody's just decided to knock on the window. Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy's not here anymore. I'll take it and I'll contact him. Could you, yeah, pop it down somewhere? Thank you. Oh, Ben, have you ever had this on an interview before?
Not yet. I've had dogs. I've had phones.
We've got DPD man here.
Excellent.
Adem.
Hi,
Yeah.
DPD man.
Thank you. Oh, goodness. Just trying to ignore him. He was standing 2 feet away from me, he's looking at me like, why aren't you talking to me? Okay.
Okay, so I
Safeguarding.
asked, yeah, so I asked about why you've decided to bring
Hmm.
safeguarding into Bowen College.
Yeah, great. Safeguarding. So safeguarding. There, over the period of time that Bowen has been available to learn as a modality and take into a training room, it spanned from, 20 odd years ago, more than that now, a 4-day training course where you had a review 2 days later, and that was you set up as a Bowen therapist, through to, there are different models of training. So there are two sets of 7 sets of 2-day modules, or the 5 module other trainings. But then that's your Bowen qualification, the end. And there are huge pluses to that. Basically, from with no bodywork background, like myself when I started Bowen, you can step into the training room and you can get access to this wonderful therapy tool. But then once you're qualified, the thing with Bowen therapy at the moment is an unregulated, independent person's way of working generally, where Bowen is currently. And there's no requirement for you to have safeguarding training. I mean, there's nobody that's going to even check if you've got insurance currently. Obviously, it's the right thing to do by law, useful, absolutely. So what with Bowen College UK, what I wanted to do was encompass all of the things that would really raise the standard of professional training. So you don't just step in on module 1 and step out module X, whatever, and there you are, a Bowen therapist. So we've encouraged and are encouraging people already qualified, but also make it part of our essential training that you do a course in safeguarding. And this isn't just to look after the client in front of you, but it's to look after yourself as well. So safeguarding is, we see now, integral. And it's not, I'm here as the face of Bowen College UK, but I am not Bowen College UK. It's every teacher, every administration person, every marketing person, and we really feel strongly that it's important to put across a standard of being with people that allows you to take care of yourself emotionally and professionally and take care of the person in front of you. It's a bit like it's essential to have a first aid course. What would you do if somebody fell over in front of you and started to fit? Would you know what to do? Would you know who to call? Would you know what not to do? The same goes for safeguarding. If you have a safeguarding issue arise, either in the treatment room or in life generally, would you know who to contact? Would you know what to say, what not to say?
Mm.
So those are two things that, first aid and safeguarding, we feel are really key. And the course that we've written, very easy access, 3.5 hours online in person. So it's not pre-recorded. It's run by two people that are very passionate about safeguarding. I am one of them. But the majority of the training is given by an ex-police officer who worked within safeguarding. And she's highly motivated to make sure that people stay as safe as possible. It's very interactive, and at the end of it, we'll even give you marketing materials that you can put out there and say, I have done some safeguarding training. And I think clients like that. They like to see that, okay, you've put yourself through, which also means getting a DBS check if you're in England, called different things if you're in different areas of the country. But it's kind of like, we're not required to by law, but I think it's really good practice. And it's open to any therapist that would like to, not specifically Bowen College UK therapists or any other Bowen therapists. Everybody is welcome because it's really important information to share.
Yeah,
Can you tell I'm
absolutely.
a little bit passionate about it?
And you absolutely were. So I was fortunate enough to get to sit through the training as well. I'd done previous safeguarding training as well, because again, within my CPD, there are a lot of things that I think are relevant, and I do end up working with a lot of vulnerable clients, and there's often, I find, a lot of mental health that is part of what's going on with physical health. So it's always been an interest of mine, and honestly, the course that you guys ran was wonderful, and I really appreciated it. And I also think it reinforces the importance of organisations like the BTPA, and the fact that we require insurance, we require proof of CBT, we require first aid certificates, all these things to try and raise that standard of who we are, which, as you say, at the moment is pretty much unregulated, but it's then incumbent on us to produce a standard that can be respected, and that people will know that when they come and see a Bowen College student, or they come and find a BTPA member, that they know there's going to be a certain level of quality in the training that they're going to be receiving when they do that. And I think in reflection on that as well, things like the 2-day courses that you offer that allow people to just start to be able to do something on a gentle level that's helping friends and family. I think we need all of those spaces within manual therapy and what we're offering as a way of helping the world around us.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but a healer in every household is kind of like our tagline. I would love Bowen to be as prevalent as shiatsu is in Japan within family units. So the end of the day, partner comes home from work and stressed out, had to put a couple of moves in here and there just to help their system defrag from the day's stresses, or help a little one get off to sleep well, or somebody twists an ankle and you've got the idea of where to go in order to facilitate immediate repair. And then you've still got the experts out there. So this is absolutely not to take away. And I have to say, everybody that comes on the 2-day courses really appreciates their Bowen practitioner even more for the knowledge that they hold.
Yeah.
2 days is just giving a little away that can create fundamental change. But it's not like we just hand over the manual and go goodbye. We've got to
Sure.
people afterwards. Should they have any questions, they can come back. I'm running a course this weekend where I have a couple of people who are like, yes, I want to redo it again. I want to bed the work in, so they're coming to revisit the work themselves.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's wonderful to get it out there so widely.
Yeah, and can you imagine the difference it would make to coming generations if a parent in every household knew just a little bit of Bowen to be able to help regulate those nervous systems on their infants? The difference it could make to parents and
Hugely.
children. Ridiculous.
Hugely. And we have an incredible, I'm so grateful. We have an incredible team of teachers around the UK right now offering those courses. So, whether you're up in the Highlands of Scotland or Southeast England, or I'm in the Southwest or London or Shropshire or the Midlands, there are courses out there that it is an investment, but I think it's a reasonable investment for what you get. Like life's work with Bowen. You can do 2 days training with these very experienced, compassionate people, and they're so they're as in love with the work as I am. So it's just like joy for a couple of days, and then you leave with knowing a little bit more about Bowen.
Brilliant. I love that. Now, one of the other things I'm really interested in talking about, as I mentioned earlier, on the 5th of October, you're going to be joining us in Clevedon in Warwickshire. This is going to be the BTPA AGM, and you're this year going to be coming along with your colleague Rebecca Ellis to introduce, as you're giving a 5-hour introduction into your empowering movement, a manual therapist guide to introduction exercises for clients.
Yeah,
Now, we should highlight this is a 5-hour CPD event for both members and non-members of the BTPA. So if you've got any Bowen, you can come along and you can take part in that as well. But it's also, I see, it's part on your website. Part one is a 2-day course, is that right? And there's
that's right.
another part coming. So just take us a little bit through, please, what you're going to kind of cover. Give us a rough idea of what you're going to cover in that 5-hour CPD, and then just expand a little bit on the part one and the coming part two, if you're happy to.
Okay, absolutely. So this course, the Empowering Movement course, was born out of a desire to upskill Bowen practitioners who are very good at doing Bowen and holding the space for clients, but then who would need to refer out to other movement therapists like yoga therapists, Pilates, personal trainers, whatever, to help the client improve their movement strategies. And over a period of years, we see clients go, "Oh, yes, that would be a great idea," or it's another bit of money to find, or it's another journey away from the family to do, or time off work, etc., etc. So, way back when the course was first evolved, Tanya and I wrote the original training together. And now it's evolved a little bit more, and Rebecca and I now teach the course. So I bring the kind of like anatomy, fascial, Bowen element to the course, and Rebecca is an exquisite movement teacher. She's trained in more modalities than I'm going to sum up in this short interview. But she's incredible teacher of movement patterns. And she's also a bone therapist. She's also a qualified traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. She's qualified in Tuina and massage. She's lived in India. She's taught yoga in India. She is the whole package, and she's wonderfully humble with it. Hugely humble. Like she should be less humble. Come on, tell her how good you are. So she brings the movement element to it because that's her background. So what the course, the 5 hours that we're going to do, we're basically going to take a bit from the 2-day training and package it together so you will know how easy it is to take an exercise for yourself, and then how to train somebody else to go through that movement pattern, because that's also, it's like taking it on board to see your own availability of movement, but then how to train others to see their own availability of movement, and then make that into an ongoing plan with them. So that's what we'll be doing over the 5 hours, to give you an idea of, it's that plus an 80-page manual of exercises and stretches that you will then be able to put together to create a little package for your clients. So it could be that, having done the CPD workshop, you can then, show that certificate to your insurance company, and then you will be insured to prescribe movement patterns. Also, there are Facebook groups to join afterwards if you have any questions, etc., etc. But it means that you can introduce movements more than just the one shoulder exercise that we were taught on the original training, and
Yeah.
which is a great shoulder exercise, but it means that we have a whole package of care. And it could be that your hour session or however long you spend with your clients is a movement session, or it could be that you go through a bit of movement and then Bowen treatment and they go home, or Bowen treatment, bit of movement, and then they go on from there. So you can work it in any way. And really, clients love it. Like, what? You can give me some exercises? Please give me some exercises. So, and some clients don't want exercises and they just want to lie on the couch and you do the work, and that's fine. But the ones that are very proactive, it means that you've got some work, and you don't have to be physically gym ready in order to do the training. I think we evolved the training from exercise and rehab to empowering movement,
Hmm.
because exercise and rehab people were kind of like considering, oh, I've got a bit of a range of movement in my shoulder that's not brilliant, I can't do the course type thing. So we work with all limitations of movement and show how to progress from there, and any kind of red flags that come up, when to work, when not to work.
Beautiful. And it's interesting as well. I love the fact that you've talked about feeling that movement inside yourself first. In the latest In Touch journal, the BTPA journal, I put an article in there about the case for a mindful movement practice as a practitioner, and how by knowing all of that stuff within ourselves, it's actually a really valuable tool to be able to then translate through to our clients. So I'm also curious, within this practice of empowering movement, are you using, or can you use some of that as assessment as well, to see
Oh,
how people are doing certain movements?
absolutely. So we've kind of divided this first course, Empowering Movement Course 1, up into body regions, not because body regions work independently of each other, but just to kind of like, right, we'll have a look at the ankle and up to the knee, we'll have a look at the pelvis, we'll have a look at the thoracic area and spinal. And then you can pick out the different ones that you feel are relevant to work with. And if your client doesn't like or doesn't need the exercise or stretch, great, move on to the next one. But each region of the body has an assessment. So
Hmm.
we have an exercise that you can do in the beginning as an assessment, prescribe any exercises and stretches, come back, reassess. So we really take you through that process. So if you've had no experience in movement before, it's a fantastic first step in to give you a process that you can follow if it's new to you. But also, we've had lots of people that are movement therapists that have kind of like come through the training room to see what it's about, and they're like, yes, no, this is great. I think the way Becky shares the work, it's just, you can take one exercise and make it last 20 minutes, and it's an interesting 20 minutes. It's not oh, I'm doing the same exercise for 20 minutes. Just, yeah, it's just great.
Yeah. No, and I get that as well. As a qigong teacher, we're always repeating the movement, but it's about what's taking place internally as we do that. And again, coming back to that internal felt sense, what do I notice within myself? What's reflecting elsewhere? Are there any other things that are happening as I do that? So, I fully get that value in being able to not just do a movement. And you can
Yeah,
see it sometimes when people are in kind of classes, they've got their iPods in, they're watching something on a screen. They're not really in their bodies at all when they're doing a thing. And then they wonder why they get injuries.
yeah.
They wonder why there's difficulties.
It's so lovely pairing this with Bowen, not too much following a Bowen session, because that window of opportunity of interoceptive and proprioceptive change for a couple of days after the treatment is kind of where you need to be careful. But
Mm,
why not introduce some careful, mindful movement at that time to repattern uh, a, a, a pattern that hasn't been as functional as it could be?
yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's great. And also we touch a little bit on the mind body aspect of, going when your mind says no, but your body says yes. And when your body says yes and your mind, we look at that too. So yeah.
I'm super excited to get into this in October. I'm really looking forward to just experiencing it, and from what you've said about Rebecca as well, I'm really excited to meet her and talk to her. And my mind's already thinking, right, where do I fit this in? Where do I come and share this? Because again, even from my qigong point of view, the more understanding I have about these things from different perspectives, I find that they just enrich what it is I'm teaching and sharing, and how I experience myself. And, really, I think that's the life journey. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've found that I do a lot of the stuff I do and the training I do because I'm curious about it for me as well, and then I can see the value for people I work with. So
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think sometimes, like I love going to sit in a Bowen classroom where somebody else is teaching, because then I get to glean kind of really interesting ways that they represent a theory that maybe I hadn't thought of before. And then a penny drops and it's like, oh, yes, that's great. I think everybody has something to share. There's no kind of like good, bad, right, wrong. It's just whether you're in the right space to integrate it at that time or not.
yeah.
Or yeah. Timelines are interesting things.
Yeah, and sometimes you need to hear a thing a few times, or you need to hear it in a few different ways. Like you say, before that penny drops, and before you go, oh, now I know what they're talking about, and it's quite an interesting one. So, so I've got a couple of little slightly to the side questions here for you. So the first one is, what do you wish that somebody had taught you when you started that's now fundamental to the way you work?
It's okay to do things your own way.
Beautiful. Succinct and perfect. Love that. Yeah, because I don't think that's something that has been traditionally given enough space in Bowen.
No, and there are I think I've watched the other interviews that have been published to date, and there are definitely some common themes from people that have been speaking about you have to, well, you don't have to, but Bowen traditionally is being handed over as do this, follow this recipe, but that's literally only to hand over an idea of how to do it.
Yeah,
That's not the idea of Bowen. That's not how, as I've heard, I've never met Tom Bowen, but how I understand Tom worked. He used a bit of a recipe, but not really. And by the end of the training that we offer, it's absolutely not procedurally based, but it's a way to start. And I think in the previous decades, it was left at that, especially if
yeah,
you kind of did a 4-day training day with a 2-day update. How would you have the further conversations? Or if you do kind of like a modular training and then step off at the other end, you
yeah,
don't get the training as to how to take out from the recipe or add in what you may need. So, um, yeah, if yeah, the doing it your way within the confines of what Bowen is, which is like lateral movements, usually around starting around the lumbar spine with breaks to see how the body is responding. But the number of moves that you do or the type of pressure that you play with, that's your practice.
yeah, yeah. And I think it's really important that that's now coming into mainstream Bowen teaching. And it's something that, as a kinesiologist, that's what I was taught years ago. We're going to give you a framework and then you explore. You explore based on what's ahead of you. And I've also seen it reflected a number of times, especially Jordan Peterson talking a lot about, when we're raising, if you like, juvenile minds or juvenile concepts, by giving a framework, you build a good structure. And then when you've got a structure, you can then talk about how to adjust out of it. And I think that that's really relevant and really important for what we're doing. But I'm also curious as well to follow up on that. Where do you see manual therapy, Bowen, evolving over the next decade or so? What's in your mind about where we're all going?
I'd kind of, I don't know. I thought you might ask this question, and I don't have a succinct answer to it. My immediate answer is almost to come back, to go forward. I think the pandemic coming in at the time that it did, which halted many therapy practices for people in clinic, it halted the ability to step into a training room to um, learn or share ideas. we've kind of had a big chunk of time taken away from us.
Mm.
And those that are able to are now returning to the training room, have returned to the treatment room. But there's still quite a divide. There aren't the same number of people on courses now as there were before, even though we've got even more information and even more value to share. So I feel like there's still a consolidation period that needs to happen before we can expand out again.
Mhm.
And also the perspective of investigating anatomy from a new perspective, fascial focused anatomy particularly, because that's like one of my passions. But I was involved in the Fascial Net Plastination project, where we created the world's first fascia focused human plastinate. If I've got more time, I'll talk about that. But if not, then we can pop some
Please
links.
do. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So just on that stream, and you might need to help me remember where I was going shortly, but I was a part of a team of worldwide fascial focused dissectors who gathered together in January 2018 at the home of Body Worlds in Guben, Germany. So Gunther von Hagens created the Body Worlds exhibit that some people may be familiar with. And where the exhibition pieces are made is in an incredible environment in Germany. And with the Fascia Research Society, Body Worlds, all of us giving our time. It was a big collaboration of a number of different organizations. We went out to Germany to see if, one, it was possible to plastinate fascia, so to make plastinated fascial specimens, because up until that time, Body Worlds had done their wonderful exhibitions, but based around classic anatomy of muscle, tendons, ligaments, and bones, and they hadn't specialized in plastinating fascia. So the Fascial Net Plastination Project was born 2018 to see if we could create some fascial specimens and see what the plastination process would do with them. And we had fantastic success with that. I'm utterly grateful for being involved in that process. Robert Schleip was hugely integral to it actually happening at the time that it did. It was a wish of his for many years, and I'm very grateful to have been involved back then. And we had an exhibition at the Fascia Research Congress in Berlin in November 2018, where we displayed the effects of our year-long process, and they were received brilliantly. And Body Worlds gave the go-ahead for us to create the world's first whole body fascia
Wow.
plastinate, fascia focused plastinate. So there were kind of ideas back and forth about how we would focus on fascia, and we decided to keep fascia in place with all of its continuities to show the relevance of fascia to traditional anatomy that's shown more frequently in the books. And so Freya was born, and I could spend another hour talking about Freya, but she resides in resides in the Body Worlds Museum in Berlin. And she is a whole body life size representation of many different types of fascia and
Mm.
their relationship to the more standard known anatomy. And from that, then Gary and I had Gary was, one of the lead designers and dissectors. I was one of the team lead dissectors for Freya. So we have quite an intimate is the wrong word, but we have worked on every millimeter of her body, and we're very proud to have been part of that worldwide team. So now we have a fascia specimen in a fascia room of fascia specimens in Body Worlds, and it is wonderful to see the younger generation come forward, and they come forward and they look into the room, and it's like, we don't recognize that,
Yeah,
but they are beginning to have the language to speak about what they see. Whereas if you think about 30 years ago, especially in osteopathic practices, you could talk about fascia, but nobody would know what it actually looked like as a body-wide network. And now we have a specimen that's there.
incredible. I love that. Wow. I mean, I've seen the Body Worlds exhibition many years ago, but I've never saw that bit. So I'll keep an eye out for it in the future. And I'm curious as well. Is there anywhere before I fall off my standing desk, is there anywhere that you think we should be exploring in bodywork that just isn't given enough attention?
Hmm. I think it's all out there.
Okay.
I think it's all out there with different people and different practices. Um, give me some more time. I could come up with a greater answer for that.
Sure.
Just sharing and pooling knowledge,
Yeah.
because where I might lack something, somebody else may have it, and great, that's information that I can grab and start working with. Um, yes,
Yeah, I think that's a really good answer, and again, it's part of the kind of the vision behind these interviews is to create greater cohesion between these different areas and looking at the value that everybody is contributing into this and looking how overall it all makes us better at what we do, even if it's just to raise a question or to consider an idea from a perspective that we'd not previously done.
absolutely, absolutely. There's space for information sharing endlessly. It's
Yeah.
just not enough hours in the day.
Never, never. It's never a dull day. The concept of being bored is an anathema to me. I can't imagine what that might be.
I thought August would be quiet, and now like we're planning 27. Yeah, time is very tangible at the moment.
Yeah, yeah. Jahan. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jahan. I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. I know that you and I could speak for many, many more hours on so many of these subjects. It's been really good listening to you here today. But what I want to do, just as a final thing, where can people learn more about you? We'll put links in the description for this interview, but where would you like people to come if they want to learn more about what you're doing?
Okay, first off, www.bowencollege.org.uk. So the online home of Bowen College in the UK. That would be one. If you're interested in learning more of a fascial focused exploration of human tissue, then you've got the fasciaanatomylabs.com. That's another link. My own website is mainly for clients. It's an example of an electronic business card. So jihanadem.co.uk. That's a little bit about me, but it's mainly so people can find out where my practice is and I can offer them something. So those would be the three places. And then I'm sure we can put some more links into the Fascial Net Plastination Project and other things if people
Yeah,
like some more CPD opportunities.
definitely. And are you on socials as well? Can we find you on those crazy places?
You can. Facebook, I'm a bit old school. I still hang out on Facebook. And I know. And Instagram are the main two, but we have a fantastic marketing person on board now who is pushing my boundaries to other platforms. So you will be able to find us on other socials shortly.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, we'll make sure we have links to all that main stuff in the description down below. So do check those out. And again, for anybody listening, thank you for your time and attention. Do check out the other interviews that we've done in this series as well. There's an absolute wealth of knowledge coming from some amazing teachers and contributors into the bone and bodywork world. And we hope to continue bringing more of those. But once again, Jahan, thank you so much for your time today. Really looking forward to seeing you on the 5th of October at the BTPA AGM as well with Rebecca. Thank you very
And
much.
thank you, Ben, for continuing to do these wonderful interviews. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.